You can't just erase everything we had.
You did that yourself.
I walked into our bedroom at exactly 7:30 on a Tuesday evening, expecting to find Elizabeth in her usual post-work uniform of wrinkled business attire and exhaustion. Instead, she stood before our full-length mirror in a black cocktail dress I'd never seen before, applying lipstick with the precision of a surgeon. "Going somewhere special?" I asked, loosening my tie after another 12-hour day running my contracting business. She didn't even glance at me. "Girls' night with Monica. You wouldn't understand. It's about being an independent woman, not tied down to some boring routine." Something in her tone made my spine straighten. 20 years of marriage teaches you to recognize the subtle shifts, the barely perceptible changes that signal trouble ahead. I pulled out my phone and casually started recording. "Independent woman, huh? That's interesting, considering you've been married to this boring routine for 2 decades. Elizabeth finally turned, her eyes flashing with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Anger? Guilt? Maybe both. "You know what, David? Maybe I need to feel alive again. Maybe I need to remember what it's like to be desired by someone who actually appreciates me, someone younger, more exciting, maybe 2 young guys who know how to treat a woman right." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. I kept my face neutral, my phone steady, watching her apply another coat of lipstick while my world shifted beneath my feet. "Well," I said, my voice remarkably calm. "Have fun with that?" I stopped recording and immediately sent the audio file to 2 contacts: Patricia, Elizabeth's mother, and Monica, her supposed best friend. The message was simple. Explain this. My phone started buzzing within 30 seconds. Elizabeth grabbed her purse, a designer bag I definitely hadn't bought for her, and headed for the door. "Don't wait up." After she left, I sat on our bed and listened to the recording 3 more times. Each replay made her words sound worse, more calculated, more deliberately cruel. The phrase, 2 young guys, echoed in my head like a broken record. My phone rang. Patricia's name flashed on the screen. "David, what is this? What did you send me?" "Your daughter's exact words, recorded about 10 minutes ago as she dressed for her girls' night." Silence stretched between us. Patricia had always treated me like Elizabeth's consolation prize, the blue-collar husband who wasn't quite good enough for her precious daughter. But even she couldn't spin this. There must be some explanation. There is. She's having an affair, possibly with multiple people, based on what she just told me. Another call came through. Monica. "I have to go, Patricia, but you might want to have a conversation with your daughter about appropriate behavior for married women." I switched to Monica's call. "David, I just heard the most ridiculous—" "Monica, cut the act. You've been her best friend since college. You're telling me you didn't know?" The pause lasted too long. Elizabeth has been going through a difficult time lately. The stress at work, the pressure. So, you did know. It's not what you think. She's just been talking to this guy, Jared. He's a real estate agent. They met at a networking event, and... Stop talking, Monica. Every word you say makes you more complicit. I hung up and walked to my home office. 20 years of marriage deserved better than a phone call confrontation. This required strategy, planning, and most importantly, evidence. I opened my laptop and began documenting everything. The recording, the mysterious new dress, the expensive purse, the sudden interest in girls' nights that had started 3 months ago. I checked our joint bank account and found several cash withdrawals I didn't recognize, each for exactly $200. My phone buzzed with a text from Elizabeth. "Having amazing time. Don't wait up. Might be very late." I screenshot the message and added it to my growing file. The house felt different without her, quieter but also somehow cleaner, like the air itself was less contaminated. I made myself a sandwich and ate it standing in the kitchen, planning my next moves. First, I needed more evidence. Second, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. Third, I needed to decide whether I wanted to save this marriage or destroy it completely. By the time I went to bed at midnight, Elizabeth still wasn't home. I set my phone to record any sounds of her return, then lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling and listening to the house settle around me. At 2:15 a.m., I heard her key in the lock. Footsteps on the stairs, deliberately quiet. The bathroom door closing, shower running. She slipped into bed 40 minutes later, smelling like soap and someone else's cologne. I pretended to sleep and started planning her downfall. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Wednesday morning brought the kind of gray October weather that matched my mood perfectly. Elizabeth left for work without speaking to me, grabbing a protein bar and her coffee in a travel mug I'd never seen before. Another small detail to add to my growing list. I had 3 job sites to visit, but my mind wasn't on crown molding or cabinet installations. Instead, I found myself parked outside Elizabeth's law firm at lunchtime, watching the entrance like some discount private investigator. At 12:30, she emerged with a man I didn't recognize, tall, probably late 20s, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. They walked close together, her hand briefly touching his arm as they talked. I followed at a distance, feeling simultaneously ridiculous and vindicated. They went to Romano's, an upscale Italian place downtown that Elizabeth had never suggested for our date nights. Through the window, I watched them share an appetizer and laugh at each other's jokes. My phone camera captured several photos before they noticed me. Not professional quality, but clear enough to show intimacy that went well beyond professional networking. I drove to Ray's gym, a converted warehouse where I'd been boxing for the past 5 years. Ray Kowalski owned the place, an ex-professional fighter who'd become my closest friend after Elizabeth systematically alienated most of our couple friends. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," Ray said, wrapping my hands for the heavy bag. "Someone stole something, all right." I told him about the recording, the lunch, the growing pile of evidence. Ray listened without interruption, occasionally nodding. When I finished, he handed me the gloves. "So, what's the plan? Divorce lawyer?" "Maybe. But first, I want to understand exactly what I'm dealing with. How long has this been going on? How many people know? How stupid do they think I am?" Pretty stupid, apparently, if they're having lunch dates in public. I spent an hour pounding the heavy bag, working out frustration and developing strategy. By the time I left, I had a clearer picture of my next steps. Stop 1. Mrs. Henderson, our 70-year-old neighbor who knew everything that happened on our street. She was watering her garden when I pulled into my driveway. "David, dear, how are you holding up?" The question caught me off guard. Holding up? Well, with Elizabeth's new situation, I've seen that young man's car in your driveway several afternoons. I just assumed you knew. My stomach dropped. "What kind of car?" "Silver Tesla. Very flashy. He's quite handsome, I'll give him that. Though I did wonder about the timing, him visiting while you're at work." I thanked Mrs. Henderson and went inside, my mind racing. Jared had been in my house, in my space, probably in my bed. I called a locksmith and had every lock changed within 2 hours. Then I installed a security camera system I'd been meaning to put in for months. If Elizabeth wanted to play games, she'd be playing by my rules now. She came home at her usual time, tried her key, and found it didn't work. I watched through the window as she stood on our porch, confusion shifting to anger. Her phone call came immediately. "David, what the hell? Why doesn't my key work?" "Security upgrade. I'll buzz you in." I let her stew on the porch for a full minute before opening the door. "Security upgrade? What are you talking about?" "Someone's been in our house while I'm at work. Silver Tesla, according to Mrs. Henderson. I figured we needed better protection." Elizabeth's face went through several expressions before settling on indignation. "You changed the locks because of some gossip from that old busybody?" "I changed the locks because my wife is having an affair and bringing her boyfriend into our home." "That's ridiculous. Jared is a professional contact. He's helping me with some real estate investments." "Real estate investments? With what money?" "I handle our finances, Elizabeth. There are no real estate investments." She pushed past me into the house. "I don't have to explain every aspect of my professional life to you." "No, but you do have to explain why you're talking about being with 2 young guys while getting dressed for your boyfriend." Elizabeth stopped walking. When she turned around, her expression had shifted again, this time to something calculating. "You recorded me? You actually recorded a private conversation in our bedroom?" "I recorded my wife making statements about infidelity. In most states, that's perfectly legal between spouses." "You're sick, David. This paranoid behavior, the accusations, changing the locks. Maybe I should be worried about my safety." The threat was clear, and I felt a cold clarity settle over me. This wasn't going to be a conversation about saving our marriage. This was going to be war. "Your safety? The only thing you should be worried about is your reputation when everyone hears exactly what you said." Elizabeth's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and I caught a glimpse of a name. Jared. "I'm going to Monica's tonight, to think about whether this marriage is worth saving." She packed a bag and left within the hour. I watched her drive away, then settled in to review the security camera footage from the past 2 hours. The cameras had captured everything, including her phone call to someone, not Monica, arranging to stay over tonight. Because David is being impossible. I saved the footage and added it to my file. Tomorrow, I'd start phase 2 of my investigation. Tonight, I'd enjoy the peace and quiet of a house without lies. Thursday brought rain and a phone call from my biggest client, Henderson Construction. Elizabeth had contacted them with concerns about my mental state and suggested they might want to reevaluate our professional relationship. I sat in my truck outside the job site, listening to Bob Henderson explain how my wife had painted me as unstable and potentially dangerous. The conversation was surreal, like hearing about someone else's life. "Bob, I need you to listen to something." I played him the recording from Tuesday night. When it finished, silence stretched between us. "Jesus, David. I'm sorry, man. Linda would have my head if she heard me talking like that." "Elizabeth also told you I was dangerous." "She mentioned concerns about your behavior, said you'd been acting erratically, making accusations. She seemed genuinely frightened." "Frightened of what? Of being caught?" I sent Bob the photos from Romano's and the security footage of Elizabeth's phone call. Within an hour, Henderson Construction had not only renewed our contract but increased it, with Bob muttering about lying wives and good men getting screwed over. My next stop was Monica's house. Her husband Jake answered the door, looking uncomfortable. "David, hey, Monica's not here." "Actually, I wanted to talk to you." Jake invited me in, offering coffee I didn't want. Monica's living room looked like a magazine spread, all perfect surfaces and carefully arranged accessories. "Jake, how long have you known about Elizabeth and Jared?" He set down his coffee cup carefully. "Monica told me it wasn't my place to get involved. But you knew." "I suspected. Monica's been covering for Elizabeth for months. Late-night phone calls, secret lunch meetings. Monica said it was just friendship, but you're not stupid." "No, I'm not, and neither are you, apparently." I showed Jake the recording and photos. His reaction was immediate and angry. "That manipulative witch. She's been using Monica, making her lie for her. Monica's been stressed out of her mind, worried about keeping Elizabeth's secrets. Where are they now?" "Some spa weekend upstate. At least that's what Monica told me, but Elizabeth's paying for everything," which seemed weird since Monica's always complaining about money. I left Jake with copies of everything and a request to call me when Monica returned. The alliance felt strange but necessary. Elizabeth had been playing games with multiple people's lives. My phone rang as I drove home. Elizabeth's number. "David, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "This has gone far enough. Your behavior is becoming concerning. Calling my clients, harassing my friends, installing cameras. I think you need professional help." "Professional help? That's rich, coming from someone who's been conducting an affair in our marital bed." "I haven't been conducting anything. Jared is a business associate who's been helping me with investment opportunities. If you could stop being paranoid long enough to listen." "Investment opportunities?" "Elizabeth, I've seen our bank statements. There are no investments. There are cash withdrawals and unexplained expenses and lies." Silence. Then, "I want you out of the house." "Excuse me?" "I'm filing a restraining order. Your behavior has become threatening and erratic. I'm genuinely afraid of what you might do." The line went quiet. I pulled over and sat in my truck, rain drumming on the roof, processing what had just happened. She was escalating. The victim narrative, the accusations of mental instability, the restraining order threat. Classic manipulation tactics, probably coached by someone who'd done this before. I called my lawyer, Janet Morrison, a tough woman who'd handled my business contracts for years. "David, I was expecting your call. Elizabeth contacted me this morning, asking about restraining orders and emergency custody arrangements." "Emergency custody? We don't have minor children." "She mentioned concerns about your mental state affecting your relationship with Sophie." "Sophie. Our 14-year-old daughter, currently staying with Elizabeth's parents while figuring out the college application process. Elizabeth was planning to use our daughter as a weapon. Janet, I need to see you today, and I need you to prepare for war." I spent 2 hours in Janet's office, laying out evidence and planning strategy. By the time I left, we had restraining orders prepared against both Elizabeth and Jared, documentation of adultery, and a clear plan for protecting my assets. But first, I had one more stop to make. Jared's real estate office occupied the ground floor of a converted Victorian downtown. Through the window, I could see him at his desk, talking on the phone and gesturing animatedly. I walked in like a potential client. "Jared Morrison? I'm David Chen. I think you know my wife, Elizabeth." His face went through several expressions before settling on fake confusion. "Elizabeth? I'm not sure I—" "Tuesday lunch at Romano's. multiple visits to my house while I'm at work. The Tesla Mrs. Henderson has been admiring. Jared stood up slowly. He was taller than me, but softer. Probably spent more time at the spa than the gym. Look, Mr. Chen, I think there's been some misunderstanding. I placed my phone on his desk and played the recording. Elizabeth's voice filled the small office. Maybe two young guys who know how to treat a woman right. When it finished, Jared sat back down. She told me you were separated, that you'd been abusive and she was planning to leave. Did she, and you believed her? She showed me bruises on her arms, said you'd been drinking, getting violent. I rolled up my sleeves, showing arms marked with cuts and calluses from 20 years of construction work, but no signs of violence. Jared, here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop seeing my wife, you're going to stop visiting my house, you're going to disappear from our lives completely. And if I don't? I smiled, probably not pleasantly. Then everyone in this town gets to hear Elizabeth's recording. Your clients, your boss, your family. Everyone gets to know exactly what kind of man destroys other people's marriages. I left him sitting at his desk, staring at my phone number on his business card. The rain had stopped by the time I got home. I made dinner for one and ate it while reviewing security footage from the past week. Elizabeth had been busy, but not as clever as she thought. Tomorrow I'd find out just how far she was willing to push this game. Friday morning brought a sheriff's deputy to my door with a temporary restraining order. Elizabeth had moved faster than expected, claiming I'd threatened her and Jared, installed surveillance equipment to stalk her, and exhibited increasingly erratic and dangerous behavior. The deputy, a young guy who looked uncomfortable with the whole situation, handed me the papers and explained the terms. I couldn't contact Elizabeth directly, couldn't go within 500 feet of her workplace, couldn't enter Monica's house where she was staying. Sir, I have to ask, are you planning to comply with this order? Absolutely, officer. My wife wants space. She'll get more space than she bargained for. After he left, I called Janet Morrison. They beat us to the courthouse, she said, but Elizabeth made some interesting claims in her filing. She says you've been drinking heavily, that you've made threats against her boyfriend, and that you've been following her. All lies. I know, but she also made a mistake. She provided specific dates and times for these alleged incidents. We can disprove most of them with your work schedule and the security footage. What about Sophie? Elizabeth's requesting emergency custody, claiming you're an unfit parent due to mental instability and substance abuse. I sat down heavily. Using our daughter as a weapon was a line I hadn't expected Elizabeth to cross. Janet, I want to file counter charges. Adultery, fraud, false accusations. Everything. Already prepared. But David, you need to be very careful now. Any contact with Elizabeth, any behavior that could be construed as threatening, and you'll end up in jail. I spent the day working, keeping busy, staying away from anywhere Elizabeth might be. But my mind was racing, planning, calculating my next moves. At 5 p.m., Jake called. Monica's back from her spa weekend. You need to hear this. I met him at a coffee shop across town, far from Elizabeth's usual haunts. Jake looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. Monica told me everything. The affair's been going on for 6 months. Elizabeth met Jared at some lawyer's networking event, and they've been meeting at his place twice a week. What else? Elizabeth's been planning this for months. The restraining order, the mental instability claims, even using Sophie as leverage. Monica's been helping her build a case against you. My hands tightened around my coffee cup. Monica's been helping her? Taking photos of you at the gym, claiming you were obsessing over violence. Recording phone conversations where Elizabeth goaded you into sounding angry. Building a narrative that you're dangerous. Why are you telling me this? Jake looked out the window, watching traffic pass. Because Monica's been crying herself to sleep every night, terrified of what Elizabeth's making her do. And because I've known you for 15 years, David, you're not dangerous. You're just married to a sociopath. He handed me a flash drive. Monica recorded Elizabeth coaching her on what to say to the police. It's all here. I pocketed the drive. Jake, you and Monica need to be careful. Elizabeth's not going to be happy when she finds out you've switched sides. We're already looking at apartments. Monica wants out of this mess. I drove home with a new understanding of what I was facing. This wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated campaign to destroy my life, steal my assets, and turn my daughter against me. Elizabeth had declared war. Time to show her what a real war looked like. I spent the evening reviewing Monica's recordings. Elizabeth's voice, cold and calculating, discussing how to manage the narrative and establish a pattern of threatening behavior. In one recording, she laughed about my reaction to her "two young guys" comment. He actually recorded it. Can you believe that? Like some paranoid psycho. Perfect for our case. By Saturday morning, I had a plan. First, I drove to Sophie's school, where she was attending a weekend college prep session. I waited in the parking lot until she came out for lunch break. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Sophie looked confused, maybe a little worried. At 14, she was old enough to sense the tension between her parents, but young enough to still believe in family stability. "I wanted to see you. Your mother and I are having some problems." "I know. Grandma Patricia said you've been acting scary." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Elizabeth had already started poisoning Sophie against me. "Sophie, I need you to listen to something. But first, I want you to know that no matter what happens between your mother and me, I love you. That will never change." I played her a carefully edited version of Elizabeth's recording, removing the explicit references but keeping the admission of the affair. Sophie's face went through several emotions. Confusion, hurt, anger. "Mom's cheating on you?" "Yes. And now she's trying to make it seem like it's my fault. Like I'm the problem." "That's why she's staying at Aunt Monica's?" "That's why she's filed a restraining order claiming I'm dangerous." Sophie was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. "Are you getting divorced?" "I don't know yet. But I want you to know that whatever your mother tells you about me, whatever anyone tells you, you can always call me. Always." I drove her back to her grandparents' house, watching her walk to the door with slumped shoulders. Elizabeth was destroying more than just our marriage. That afternoon, I implemented phase 2 of my plan. I drove to Jared's neighborhood, an upscale development where every house looked like it cost more than I made in 5 years. His Tesla was in the driveway of a modern monstrosity with too much glass and not enough character. I parked down the street and waited. At 7 p.m., Elizabeth's car pulled into his driveway. She was carrying an overnight bag. I took photos of her entering his house, then drove to the nearest police station. "Officer, I'd like to report a violation of a restraining order." The desk sergeant looked up from his paperwork. "What kind of violation?" "My wife filed a restraining order claiming she was afraid of me, that I was stalking her and threatening her boyfriend. But she's currently at her boyfriend's house for what appears to be an overnight visit." I showed him the photos, time-stamped and geotagged. "Sir, restraining orders typically prevent you from contacting or approaching the petitioner. They don't prevent the petitioner from living their life." "I understand, but she claimed in her filing that she was terrified of me, that she needed protection. Yet she's comfortable enough to conduct her affair openly. I think that speaks to the validity of her claims." The sergeant took copies of the photos and my contact information. "We'll look into it." I drove home feeling like I'd won a small victory. Elizabeth wanted to play legal games? She'd discover that two could play. Sunday morning brought a phone call from Patricia. "David, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "Sophie played me a recording yesterday. Something about Elizabeth and another man." I waited. "Is it true? Is Elizabeth having an affair?" "Yes, Patricia. For 6 months, according to her best friend." Silence stretched between us. Patricia had never liked me, had always treated me like Elizabeth's temporary mistake. But adultery was adultery, even to a social climber like my mother-in-law. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to protect myself, my assets, and my daughter. In that order." Sophie's very upset. Sophie should be upset. Her mother is destroying our family for a real estate agent she's known for 6 months. Another pause. "David, I owe you an apology. I always thought Elizabeth could do better. I was wrong." After 20 years, Patricia's validation felt hollow, but I'd take allies wherever I could find them. "Patricia, I need you to document everything Elizabeth tells you about this situation. Dates, times, exact quotes. This is going to get uglier before it's over." Monday morning, I returned to work with a new sense of purpose. Elizabeth had escalated this conflict beyond marriage problems into legal warfare. Time to show her what a real fight looked like. Monday brought unexpected allies and devastating revelations. Janet Morrison called at 8 a.m. with news that changed everything. "David, we need to meet immediately. I've been digging into Jared's background, and you're not going to believe what I found. I met her at her office an hour later." Janet had papers spread across her conference table like a general planning a military campaign. "Jared Morrison isn't just some random real estate agent Elizabeth met at a networking event. He's Patricia's nephew." I stared at her. "What?" "Patricia's sister's son. Elizabeth's cousin by marriage. They've known each other since childhood." The implications hit me like a truck. This whole thing was planned. It gets worse. Jared's been in financial trouble for months. His real estate license is under review for ethics violations, and he owes significant money to several creditors. Elizabeth's been paying his bills. Janet showed me bank records, credit card statements, financial documents that painted a picture of calculated fraud. She's been embezzling from your joint accounts to fund his lifestyle. The cash withdrawals, the mysterious expenses, it all went to Jared. How much? Approximately $30,000 over the past 6 months. I sat back in my chair, processing this information. Elizabeth hadn't just been having an affair. She'd been systematically looting our marriage to support her boyfriend. There's more. Jared's previous girlfriend filed a restraining order against him last year. Harassment, stalking, financial manipulation, the same pattern he's following with Elizabeth. So he's a professional manipulator. And Elizabeth walked right into his trap. But David, this gives us enormous leverage. Financial fraud, conspiracy, false accusations, we can destroy both of them. I left Janet's office with a new understanding of the situation. Elizabeth wasn't just unfaithful, she was a criminal, and Jared wasn't just a homewrecker, he was a predator. My first stop was Patricia's house. I needed to know how much she knew about her nephew's involvement. Patricia answered the door looking older than her 62 years. The past week had aged her. David, I was hoping you'd come by. We need to discuss this situation. She led me to her living room, the same space where I'd endured 20 years of subtle insults and condescension. Patricia, how long have you known about Jared and Elizabeth? She looked genuinely confused. Jared? My sister's boy? What does he have to do with this? I showed her the photos from Romano's, the bank records, the evidence of their relationship. Patricia's reaction was immediate and visceral. Her face went white, then red, then white again. That little snake. I should have known. He's been asking about Elizabeth for years, asking about your finances, your business. You never mentioned him to Elizabeth? Of course I did. He's family. But I never imagined. David, Jared has been trouble since he was a teenager. Lying, stealing, manipulating people. His mother's been bailing him out of problems for years. Patricia picked up her phone. I'm calling his mother right now. I listened to one side of a heated conversation in which Patricia demanded to know what her sister knew about Jared's relationship with Elizabeth. When she hung up, her face was grim. Helen knew. She's been worried sick about what Jared was planning. Apparently, he's been bragging about landing a rich lawyer who would solve all his financial problems. So, Elizabeth's the mark? Elizabeth's the mark, and you're the obstacle to be removed. I drove home with a new appreciation for the complexity of the trap Elizabeth had walked into. But my sympathy was limited. She'd made choices, and those choices had consequences. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Monica's number. David, you need to know something. Elizabeth planning something big for tonight? What kind of something? She's been talking to some lawyer about having you arrested. She wants to claim you violated the restraining order, that you've been threatening her. I haven't been anywhere near her. I know, but she's planning to stage something, make it look like you contacted her, maybe even make it look like you showed up at Jared's house. I felt ice water in my veins. Monica, are you sure? She's been coaching Jared on what to tell the police. They're going to claim you've been stalking them, making threatening phone calls, maybe even that you tried to break into his house. Why are you telling me this? Because Jake and I are getting divorced, and Elizabeth's been trying to turn me against my own husband. She's poison, David. Pure poison. I thanked Monica and immediately called Janet Morrison. Janet, they're planning to frame me tonight. Where are you now? Home. Stay there. Don't leave. Don't answer the door except for police, and make sure your security cameras are recording everything. I'm coming over. Janet arrived within an hour, bringing a paralegal and enough recording equipment to document everything that happened. David, if they're planning to frame you, we're going to be ready. Every minute of tonight will be documented and witnessed. We settled in to wait. At 9 p.m., my phone started ringing. Unknown numbers, hang-ups, calls that lasted just long enough to establish a pattern of harassment. They're building a record, Janet said. Jared's probably calling from different phones, making it look like you're calling them. At 10:30, a police car pulled into my driveway. 2 officers approached my door. I answered with Janet beside me and cameras rolling. Mr. Chen, we've received reports that you've been making threatening phone calls and may have been seen in the vicinity of Jared Morrison's residence tonight. I showed them my phone records, the security footage proving I'd been home all evening, and the witness statements from Janet and her paralegal. The older officer looked at the evidence, then at his partner. Sir, it appears these allegations are false. We're going to need to have a conversation with the complainants. After they left, Janet smiled for the first time all week. David, they just handed us everything we need. False police reports, conspiracy to commit fraud, a violation of their own restraining order by contacting you through proxy calls. What happens now? Now we go on the offensive. Tomorrow morning, we file criminal charges against both of them. By the end of the week, Elizabeth's going to wish she'd never heard Jared Morrison's name. I spent that night reviewing everything that had happened, from Elizabeth's two young guys comment to the failed frame-up attempt. In 1 week, my marriage had exploded into a criminal conspiracy. But for the first time since this started, I felt like I was winning. Tuesday morning, Janet and I walked into the courthouse like generals leading an army. We filed criminal charges against Elizabeth for fraud, embezzlement, and filing false police reports. Against Jared for conspiracy, harassment, and financial manipulation. Against both of them for attempting to frame me. The desk clerk's eyes widened as she processed the paperwork. "Sir, this is quite extensive. Are you sure you want to proceed with all these charges?" "Every single one," I replied. By noon, both Elizabeth and Jared had been arrested. I wasn't there to see it, but Jake called with a detailed report. Elizabeth was at Monica's house when they came for her. She actually tried to claim diplomatic immunity because she's a lawyer. The officers were not impressed. What about Jared? Arrested at his office in front of 3 clients and his boss. His real estate career is officially over. I should have felt satisfaction, but mostly I felt tired. 20 years of marriage, reduced to criminal charges and police reports. My phone rang. Sophie's number. "Dad? Grandma Patricia said Mom got arrested?" "Yes, sweetheart. Your mother made some bad choices, and now she has to face the consequences." "Are you okay?" The concern in her voice almost broke me. "I'm okay. Are you?" "I'm confused and angry, and I don't understand how everything got so messed up." "Neither do I, Sophie. But I promise you, we're going to get through this." After I hung up, Janet handed me a stack of papers. Elizabeth's lawyer wants to negotiate. Apparently spending a night in jail has given her some perspective on the situation. What kind of negotiation? Full confession to the affair and financial fraud in exchange for dropping the criminal charges. Uncontested divorce with a fair asset split. No custody fight over Sophie. I read through the proposed agreement. It was more than fair. It was generous, considering what Elizabeth had put me through. What's the catch? No catch. Elizabeth's lawyer made it clear that if this goes to trial, she'll likely face jail time and lose her law license. The evidence is overwhelming. And Jared? Separate deal. He pays back every penny he stole, leaves town permanently, and never contacts either of you again. In exchange, we drop the criminal charges. I thought about it for exactly 30 seconds. No deal. Janet looked surprised. "David, this gives you everything you wanted." "No, it doesn't. It gives Elizabeth an easy way out after she tried to destroy my life. It lets Jared walk away to find another victim. It teaches Sophie that actions don't have real consequences." "So, what do you want?" "I want them both to face the full consequences of their choices. A criminal trial, civil penalties, public humiliation, everything." Janet nodded slowly. "It's going to get ugly." "It's already ugly. Now it's going to get honest." That afternoon, I drove to the jail to see Elizabeth. She looked terrible. No makeup, wrinkled clothes, the kind of appearance she'd spent 20 years avoiding. We sat across from each other in a sterile visiting room, separated by reinforced glass and 20 years of lies. "David, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "This has gone too far. We both made mistakes, but we can still fix this. We can still save our family." "Save our family?" "Elizabeth, you've been stealing from our joint accounts to pay your boyfriend's bills while planning to have me arrested on false charges. What family are you talking about?" "I never meant for it to go this far. Jared, he's not who I thought he was." "No, he's exactly who he's always been. A manipulative predator who saw you coming from miles away. The question is, what does that make you?" Elizabeth's composure cracked. "I made a mistake. One mistake. Are you really going to destroy 20 years of marriage over one mistake?" "One mistake? Elizabeth, you've been conducting a 6-month affair with your cousin-in-law while systematically looting our finances and planning to frame me for crimes I didn't commit. That's not one mistake. That's a pattern of calculated betrayal. I'll make it right. I'll pay back every penny, end things with Jared, go to counseling. Whatever you want. What I want is for you to face the consequences of your choices. What I want is for Sophie to learn that actions have results. What I want is for the next man you meet to know exactly what kind of person he's dealing with." I stood to leave. "David, please, I'm begging you." "You should have thought about begging before you decided to destroy our marriage." I walked out of the jail and drove home to my empty house. For the first time in months, the silence felt peaceful instead of ominous. That evening, Patricia called. "David, I spoke with Elizabeth's lawyer. She's willing to accept any terms you set. The terms are simple: full criminal trial, complete financial disclosure, public admission of guilt, no plea bargains, no reduced charges, no sealed records. That seems harsh. Patricia, your daughter tried to have me framed for crimes I didn't commit. Your nephew has been systematically manipulating her while stealing my money. Harsh doesn't begin to cover what they deserve. What about Sophie? Sophie will learn that her parents are human beings who make choices and live with consequences. That's probably the most valuable lesson I can teach her. Wednesday brought news that Jared had tried to flee the state and been arrested at the Canadian border. His desperation was almost comical, but it solidified the prosecution's case. Thursday, Elizabeth's law firm announced her termination for conduct incompatible with professional standards. Her career, like her marriage, was officially over. Friday, I met with the prosecutor to review the evidence and prepare for trial. Mr. Chen, I have to tell you, this is one of the most comprehensive cases of marital fraud I've ever seen. The documentation is extraordinary. I'm a detail-oriented person. The defense is going to argue that your wife was manipulated by Mr. Morrison, that she's as much a victim as you are. The evidence will speak for itself. Saturday, I took Sophie out for lunch. She looked older, more serious, like the events of the past 2 weeks had forced her to grow up quickly. Dad, do you hate Mom? I thought carefully before answering. No, Sophie, I don't hate her, but I can't trust her, and I can't forgive what she's done. Sometimes that's the same thing as hate, but it's not. Are you ever going to get back together? No. Your mother made choices that can't be undone, but that doesn't mean we can't both love you and be good parents to you. Will she go to jail? Probably. For a while. Sophie nodded, processing this information with the resilience of youth. I'm proud of you, Dad, for fighting back, for not letting them win. That night, I sat in my living room, reviewing the events of the past 2 weeks. Elizabeth's betrayal, Jared's manipulation, the criminal charges, the destroyed relationships. In trying to destroy me, Elizabeth had destroyed herself. In trying to frame me, she'd exposed her own crimes. In trying to take everything from me, she'd lost everything herself. Justice, it turned out, had a sense of irony. The trial was scheduled for the following month. By then, everyone in our small city would know the truth about Elizabeth's affair, Jared's manipulation, and the conspiracy to frame me. Elizabeth had wanted to feel alive, to be desired by someone who appreciated her. Instead, she'd discovered that some desires come with prices too high to pay. As for me, I'd learned that 20 years of marriage could evaporate in a single recording, but that self-respect was worth fighting for. The house was quiet, peaceful, and finally honest. For the first time in months, that felt like enough.